Alrighty, sorry about that. Welcome back to another thrilling installment of Fraggoth Reads. I'm your intrepid narrator, Fraggoth, and today we're going to read more Red Noise by John P. Murphy. That's the wrong button. There it is. So yeah, last time things escalated a bit. Feeney, up in his cups, plotting with Screwball, comes up with the brilliant idea to have Screwball plant what was definitely a police Corvette black box, for sure, in Sparks' hangar. Well, turns out that it's a pocket nuke. And Ditz is the one who recognizes this and is like, "Whoa, dude, we gotta get rid of this thing." So they go and they proceed to get rid of it. Well, actually, they proceed to plant it. I shouldn't say get rid of it because they very much do not do that. And the miner catches wind of this plot because Mary Feeney tells Raj Del Rio, I think they might have chemistry, guys. That, hey, this is for real. There really is a loose miniature demolition nuke floating around that somebody is probably planting. We need to take care of that toot sweet. So the miner catches wind of this and basically snags the thing and takes it on a spacewalk and plants it somewhere outside the asteroid so it won't pop the whole thing like a tin can. I'm not really sure why she didn't just throw it into space first. Because nukes are notoriously mediocre in the context of a vacuum. Anyway, it does ring the thing like a bell. Maybe she did toss it and I just misunderstood. Anyway, she hides as best she can behind a little rock outcropping on the station, the asteroid station. But Screwball felt it in his knees and his guts before he heard it, an all-shaking bass thump like God's foot up his ass. He stood numb as the floor rumbled, as the roar echoed in the stairwell around him, and then as it subsided, he sank to his knees and cried. In no small part, because his friend Ditz took a stray bullet in the fracas that occurred because everyone's freaked out about the pocket nuke, and everybody now has guns. So Ditz caught a stray and appears to have died. So, R.I.P. Ditz. You were too innocent for this world, even though you absolutely murdered like 4 people not that long ago. It's okay. We love you anyway, Ditz. So yeah. With that, let me slurp down some more water, and we shall resume. Fiddling. The miner stood in the dark of the viewing bay, watching the big science ship emerge like an iceberg from the broken hangar, propelled by a hangar full of air in which it moved slowly, almost regally. The main explosion had only weakened the rock and partly blasted the doors in. Air pressure and metal fatigue had taken time to do their thing, but the chop shop's now gaping doors had become a lazy geyser, pushing tools and blinking bots on streams of evaporating air as the badly maintained emergency systems struggled to clamp down on the burst flows of atmosphere, water, and sewage. It all glittered prettily in the navigation lights. Air-filled compartments on the ship ruptured under their own pressure, and the great weakened hulk twisted and tore itself like a stunted butterfly struggling from a chrysalis. It would never go back in a repair bay in that shape. Impossible to hide. Impossible to profit from. The miner had her sword out fast when the hatch opened behind her. McMasters stood silhouetted against the bright corridor lights. He looked exhausted, beaten. Unarmed, though, and unsurprised to see her. "The security cameras here still work," he said. He sounded beaten, too. "Some of the only ones that do. That Angelica hasn't press-ganged into her piddly little information empire. Low-light sensitive. People used to come up here after hours to screw. My predecessor amassed quite a collection." He left the hatch open, spilling a beam of yellow light onto the floor. He walked in and took a post at the observation bar on the edge of the darkness, letting the light beam separate them. The miner sheathed her sword and half-turned so that she could see him and the wreckage at the same time. "I looked you up, you know," he said. "I looked you up, you know," he said, staring at the ship as it contorted under explosive pressure, throwing off detritus that glimmered like stars. "I got a good picture and looked you up in the government's facial recognition system. Do you know what came back?" She raised an eyebrow, but didn't bite. "Nothing. Nothing came back. Not a thing. So, being a good citizen, I uploaded it with a complete description of your criminal activities. Do you know how this official government system responded?" She already had the eyebrow raised and didn't see any reason to change that fact. "It said to say hi," McMasters said. He turned with his hand still on the bar. "Hi." "Howdy," she said, and it didn't improve his mood. "Who the hell are you?" She shook her head. "Just another asteroid miner, that's all. Got a past like anyone else. Maybe I abused my connections a little bit. Maybe you ought to think about what connections I might still have." Silence again. She felt a tremor in the bar and under her feet. Her pulse quickened for a moment, and she wondered if a piece of the wreck had hit the station. McMasters looked down at a handheld screen, its green cast on his face in the dark, painting him as a drowned sailor. He snapped it off suddenly, and in the afterglow his face appeared red. "Explosion on deck 6, northeast quadrant. I suppose you know what's there." "Feeney's little drug lab?" "Feeney's little drug lab. You wouldn't know anything about that either, I suppose. Just another asteroid miner." "Not surprised, anyway." "What's your name?" She shook her head. "Are you working for Shinagawa? Shine? Is that what this is? Again, she shook her head. McMasters gripped the bar and turned full on her, nostrils flared. "What the hell do you want from me?" "I want you to do your job." "Job? What job? They dumped me in this hole between two bickering morons and told me to deal with it. Make it be quiet. There's no job here, there's only survival, and I'm doing that just fine." "You're being a leech. A goddamn crooked leech. I told you every gravy train stops. This is the end of the line," she said, waving her hand at the drifting wreck. "Get ships in here. Arrest Feeney and Angelica. When Mary and Raj take over their sides, tell them to clear out. No more profit here. Party's over. Give the people here a chance to get back on their feet. You do that, and I'll back you to the hilt. But if you don't, then I'll make damn sure you regret it." McMasters looked suddenly, briefly, very old and very tired. It turned into a snarl. "You say I'm a leech," he growled, his voice coarse with emotion. "Well, I won't argue with you. Miss High and Mighty. Better a leech than a louse, I say. You don't care about this station. You don't care about these people. You don't care about anything. You're vermin.
Unwanted, unwelcome, flitting from station to station until someone notices you long enough to crush you like a bug.
She felt her fingers tighten around the bar despite herself. You're not very good at this threatening thing.
I like it here, louse. I've got a good thing going, and I've got a right to be here, and if I'm a leech, then by God, I've got my teeth in good, and it's not over until I say it's over.
The reflected light off the wreck played on his face, twisted in bitter fury, droplets of sweat glistening in the fairy light, angry to the point of panting. She pursed her lips. I think it's the mustache. I hear you ranting, but I keep expecting you to ask my drinks order.
Who's paying you? Shine? Herrera?
Go shave it off and threaten me again. I think it'll work better. He slammed his fist down on the bar and obviously regretted it, but at least had the self-control to not too obviously rub his hurt hand.
You think you're funny?
Just passing the time while I wait for you to be serious. He stormed out, leaving her with a few hissed words.
You're about to see how serious I can be.
Is it just, or is my mic gain higher than usual? I think it is. Let's tweak it and see if that helps. Oh, I know what it is. Is that better? I can't tell. Yeah, it's hovering around the same volume level. Okay, whatever. Long time coming. Ooh. Nope, I did flick the wrong thing. One sec. There we go. That should be better. Oh, I did not want to do that. Sorry. Okay. Long time coming. Space stations monitor wide fields around their positions. Dangers surround them on all sides. Their denizens picture rocks the size of ships in their nightmares, when really all it takes is a pebble the size of a fingertip, with enough speed to punch a major hole in a hull. Even with modern self-repair technologies, that tends to ruin someone's day. Junk lasers and ablative plating help, but only go so far. Any station that wants to survive keeps LiDAR and camera arrays on a steady monitoring sweep backed by AIs. But again, that goes only so far. Those systems are expensive, and space stations are built and maintained by the lowest bidders. For every station, then, there's a horizon beyond which no routine scanning is done. A ship, a yacht, for example, orbiting just beyond that horizon, could escape detection for a very long time, particularly if John Feeney is paying people not to notice it. 6 months is a very long time to anyone waiting on that ship who is unaccustomed to solitude. A guy gets refused docking rights at 3 different stations, he starts to take it personal, starts to want to come home. Eventually, the decent booze runs out, and the better drugs. Eventually, a person has played every game, watched every movie and serial in both VR and flat, gotten bored with all the pornography. Eventually, even the robot-delivered food and water becomes yet another reminder of how very badly a person has been betrayed by his friends and his kin. Wilfred Nuke Feeney watched, spellbound, as a ship slowly and delicately exploded off the port side. He felt he'd never seen anything so beautiful in his life. All tangerine orange and aneurysm red through the camera filters, struggling and writhing like a poisoned animal, throwing off sparks and debris for the lasers to burn up. He felt as though the universe was putting on a show for only him, finally sending him a sign. He watched a long time, idly scratching the hard, blinking bulge in his chest, thinking. Wilfred Nuke Feeney had him an idea. Midnight Rendezvous. The miner left the observation lounge when the wreck had drifted away from the nav lights, swallowed up by the dark. The geyser had stopped, and she figured the old emergency systems had finally staunched the bleeding of water and air. She wasn't going to simply suffocate then. Time to go. Time to tend her own garden, literally and figuratively. The route back to her ship had to go around or through the Galleria, unless she felt like putting the pressure suit back on for a 2-hour spacewalk. All told, she figured she'd see less resistance going through Angelica's territory than Feeney's, and plotted her course that way. The sounds of fighting grew as she walked. Gunshots, screaming. The lid had come off. This was just the first release of pressure, she knew. They'd retreat to their lairs, both sides wounded, but not mortally, not yet. There could be no peace after this, though. They'd grind each other down until the law finally came, if not for them, then for that ship and its murdered crew. It was already dying down as she walked the back passages. The shots grew louder but fewer. If Takata hadn't gotten her message to bunker down, hadn't passed it on, there wasn't anything she could do about it now.
There you are, just the woman. Come on, damn you, I need you.
Raj appeared in front of her, pistol out and panting from running. He'd lost the fez. He pointed to her and grinned. The miner looked on the charming, murderous bastard with a mixture of anger and pity. She wondered if it was worth killing him. There was no doubt he'd be good with that gun, but she was pretty damn good with a sword, and had her diamond skin on. She shook her head. I'm done. I paid your sister back.
Fuck my sister. I need you. I need you.
She stopped, intrigued despite herself. For what?
Plan B. You'll hate it. Come on.
He ran, expecting her to follow, and for some reason she did. They didn't go far, down 2 decks by the stairs. Raj ran like a man possessed, heedless of the patches of fighting except that he must have had some idea where they were, because the two of them didn't see any of what she heard.
Slow down, she said. I don't want to run into a trap. Don't worry, we're almost there.
Where's there? The miner asked, and wasn't surprised to not receive an answer. They rounded a corner and came on a storefront. Anita Nurse, Apothecary, read the friendly blue sign over windows covered over with yellow plastic sheeting. Raj stopped with a loud sigh and bent over with his hands on his knees. A grim-faced young man in a motley assortment of armor stepped smartly out of the storefront's door. The miner recognized him, and realized only a moment too late that they were on opposite sides, as Screwball stepped back and drew on her, eyes wide and panicked behind the handgun. He yelled at her to freeze, and she obliged. She let her hands go out at her sides, eyeing him warily. He had a good 10 centimeters on her, and had added decent armor to his outfit since she'd last seen him, even if it looked like it had been scavenged from a half-dozen suits and styles. The black jumpsuit underneath was probably cut-resistant fabric, and the green-gray and black armor pieces looked like a jumble of mechanics protection and standard military ablative. He also looked exhausted to the point of haunted. She could take him apart if she could get close, but it still wouldn't be easy. That panic in his eyes was a double-edged sword. He couldn't cover Raj and her both, but there was no telling what he'd do when Del Rio caught his breath and made a move. She made use of his distracted attention between the two of them to slowly get her hands in a position where she could draw and dash. Get him off kilter, rely on her implants to close in fast for the kill. Mary appeared in the door behind him, bloodied and worried-looking. She saw the miner and tensed, her hands on the throwing knives at her belt. The miner swore to herself, but Mary looked instead at Raj and ran for him. Screwball stepped to the side and didn't fire. The miner shifted her weight for the sprint, waiting for Mary to knife Raj as her distraction. Raj heaved himself upright just as the knife fighter reached him, and they kissed. Nice day for it.
The miner prided herself on being hard to faze, but the previous 10 minutes had tested that sorely. She and the other guy, who reintroduced himself as Corbell, had ended their standoff in mutual befuddlement as Raj and Mary pawed each other in the middle of the corridor. She wasn't entirely surprised to see Doc Mills show up in the doorway next, looking worried and impatient. He and the miner made eye contact, but he didn't say anything to her, only cleared his throat at the pair of criminal scions. They disentangled themselves from each other and entered the pharmacy. The miner and Corbell shrugged and obeyed Mary's throaty, "Come on, you assholes." It went fast. The 5 of them ducked into the dark, wrecked shop, into a clearing in the middle of the knocked-over shelves. The miner figured a pharmacist's shop wouldn't have lasted long once the goons had let themselves free with the looting, and other than a tube of hemorrhoid cream, she seemed to be right. Doc Mills glared at all of them in equal measure, but let Raj and Mary approach him. For 2 minutes they spoke softly, with Corbell scowling at her every time she made a move to get closer. "Once more for the witnesses," Mills said louder. "I do," Raj and Mary said at once. "All right," the doctor sighed. "You're married. It's as legal as I can make it, if you care. Kiss her, you idiot." Raj obliged, and the doctor pushed his way between the miner and a stunned Corbell. Mills paused next to the miner and muttered, "Finn's dead," before he moved along like he hadn't said anything. She blinked and watched him go, suddenly feeling sick to her stomach. The 2 of them hadn't been dismissed, exactly, so much as made the mutual decision to stand guard outside when the kiss got hotter and clothes started coming off. She stood on opposite sides of the door once Corbell managed to drag it closed, and the silence between them became increasingly uncomfortable as the noises inside got louder. This what you were expecting?" Corbell finally asked. "No." "Yeah, Mary was pretty tight-lipped, but I heard her calling off an ambush down here, clearing the area. They were pissed." "That's so?" "Pretty pissed, yeah." He glanced her up and down, his eyes lingering on the hand resting on her sword. "You're pretty good with that thing, huh?" "Seems that way." "Bunch of people want to teach you a lesson." "That's so." "They're pretty good, too." "That's nice." "We did all right after you left, you know." The miner shrugged. "We're not just idiots and assholes. We gave as good as we got." They stood, leaving that sentiment in the air, and the miner felt ridiculous standing. She wanted to do something, felt frustrated and angry about Finn. Corbell gave up and rested his head against the wall with a soft thump. They hadn't gotten the door all the way closed, and from outside the shop the vigorous humping sounded like busted hydraulics. Corbell fidgeted, shifting his weight from leg to leg, and she was pretty sure that finger was on its way to a nostril at one point before he caught himself. "You want to, No," she said. Right. The miner stood and brooded. The fighting was still going on elsewhere. Without this wedding, it would grind down to chaotic vendettas. Feeney and Angelica would be bust. Mr. Shine and the Morlocks were ready to step in and enforce a new peace. Her plan had worked, except... Well, when those 2 newlyweds came out, that was her plan blown to hell. She fingered the hilt of her sword absent-mindedly. "Ditz is dead," Corbell said suddenly. The miner took a moment to put the name to the face of one of the older toughs, a stringy, happy-looking guy. "I'm sorry," she said. "He was a good guy." "I didn't know him," she said, feeling awkward. "I'm sorry." He kept going, though she wished he wouldn't. "I thought I hated him. You know? He was so annoying, and he shot people he shouldn't have, and he was high all the time. Like, seriously, high all the time. I know other people got killed, too. You killed some of them. It's just, I didn't expect to miss him, and I do." The miner looked at her embarrassed counterpart once the verbal torrent dried up, and felt for a moment a pang of sympathy. "You pick your pain," she said. "The fuck that's supposed to mean? The fuck's that supposed to mean? I didn't want to hang out with him." She shook her head. "We all do. If you choose to be with people, you choose the misery that comes with losing them. It's a gamble. Maybe they lose you first. You could have been an asshole to him, pushed him away, but you got something out of being friends, and now it hurts. Doesn't mean you picked wrong, just that you paid the piper sooner than you'd rather. He made an undignified snuffling noise, and she chose not to look.
Yeah? What did you pick?
She was about to say, talkin' to morons, and instead found herself saying, I picked a ship and a plant room, and no more attachments. The noises and groans inside subsided, and there was a long stretch of two silences, a suspicious one inside, and a relieved one outside. She found herself drumming her fingers on the sheath of her sword, trying not to hear giggling. She heard their surprise and aggravation trying to drag the door open. It gave her plenty of time to step aside, get ready. 1 on 3, with the 3 in this shape, no problem. Maybe just 1 on 2. She didn't care if Corbell got away. The door came free in a second, and a rumpled, half-dressed Mary appeared. She yawned happily and stretched.
All right, you bastards, she said pleasantly. Time to go tell our darling families.
The miner looked at the beaming young woman and her new husband grinning bashfully behind her. Congratulations, she said, and walked away. "6 months and a bunch of dead bodies ago." Angelica put her hands flat on the table and leaned across it. She looked into each set of worried, frightened, pissed-off eyes in turn. All of Feeney's main people, or most of them, Neha Sparks Lagari, who ran the chop shop, Zachy Morgan, who wrangled the sex workers, Pater Finn, who ran the distillery and brewery, Xiao Han, who ran the drug lab, Raphael, who managed smuggling operations. Then, too, there was that anaconda guy, what's-his-name, Gordonson, who was pretty thoroughly in the old man's pocket and insisted on having his say at length about this little trouble with Wilfred. Only Shine was missing, since he refused to have anything to do with it, and Mary for obvious reasons. Raj leaned against the back wall, playing with his knife and looking uncomfortable. "If you're asking me to turn on John Feeney, the answer is no," she said, when she thought one of them might break the silence on their terms instead of hers.
Not turn on him, Sparks said. She'd done most of the talking so far. Make him see sense. God's sake, Angelica, this is a nuclear device we're talking about. And I'll swear, if you say a small one again, I'll stab you in the neck.
Angelica put her palms up in a placating gesture against her, and the others muttering. "Fine. I admit that was a poor choice of words. I'm sorry. Look, we don't know that it's actually rigged to explode. All we know is Wilfred tells us it is, and he was under sedation when Joff put it in."
What does Joff say?
"He doesn't know, Finn. Wilfred told him it was some kind of police black box or something. He's so freaked out it'll be a year before he sobers up."
So he can't take it out?
Sparks challenged. "Would you trust him to operate on you in this condition?"
Christ, I wouldn't trust him to bandage a paper cut.
Angelica gestured. "There you go. And Mills won't touch it. What do you want the old man to do?" Oh, I got Mills and Joff confused. My bad.
Something. Anything. Stick him in a torpedo and shoot him out the airlock. I don't care.
"He's not going to do that. Wilfred's his grandson."
"Kid's a bleeding psycho," Shao rumbled. "Did you know he's going around telling people to call him Nuke? He's enjoying this."
"For now," Angelica said. "The thing's got a battery in it, and it's not intended to stay armed for a long time. Worst case scenario, we ride this out in a couple months."
"Months?"
The anaconda man's face went red again. Angelica always thought he looked like Santa Claus like that, rosy-cheeked.
Mr. Feeney told me this would all blow over in a week.
You're too close to the old man, Raphael said, scowling at her. You take his side no matter what. Can we trust you not to go straight to him after this, rat us all out?
Angelica didn't answer right away. If she said yes too fast, they'd never believe her. So she sat down, ran her tongue over her teeth, and looked up into the anxious faces. I'm not going to say anything to him about you. Look, I don't like this either. Don't look at me like that. Nobody sane would like this. The old man thinks it's funny, Sparks said. And you know what? I'm pretty sure he has more little military toys squirreled away. He won't give me a straight answer where Wilfred got that thing in the first place. He doesn't owe you one, Angelica snapped. The hell he doesn't. This has gone too far, Angelica. Way too far. We've put our necks on the line for the Feeneys plenty of times, all of us. How many times have I been raided now? 6? 7? We don't have time. We don't have to prove our loyalty to him. We've done that. It's time he proved his to us. To us. Angelica massaged the bridge of her nose, willing away the headache that had been her constant companion for the last 2 weeks. I understand. I'll talk to him again, try to get him to see reason. And if he won't? I've known John Feeney a very long time. He'll see reason. And if he won't? Then I'll cross that bridge if I come to it, she said, and looked again from face to dubious face in turn. You've said your piece, and I've said what I'll do. That will have to be enough. They seemed to understand themselves to be dismissed then, or at least they stood up. Sparks sat the longest, pretending to fiddle with her prosthetics until the others had excused themselves and let themselves out of the restaurant back room. The mechanic looked at her cohort leaving through the closed main dining room, darkened except for the little fake candles on white-clothed, white-clothed, round tables. She looked up to Angelica as she stood and said thoughtfully, I'll be honest, I expected them to open that door and find the old man and a bunch of guns. I don't work that way, Angelica said. She glanced at Raj, who had half-heartedly advocated exactly that course of action and gotten exactly that reply. He either hadn't been listening or his poker face was getting better. You going back to the hotel? Angelica nodded. I'm moving out, Sparks told her. There's a cot in my office that's comfy enough. Angelica looked a question, and she shrugged. The old man's got a magnetism to him. You stay around him too long, you listen to him too long, you start to believe him too much. I've got work to do anyway. There's room for 2, you know. She grinned at Angelica's discomfort. Anyway, if you ask me, that's the safest place to be if Willie's little insurance plan goes pop. Angelica shuddered. Don't even joke about it. Sparks shrugged elaborately and walked past Raj, giving him a long look but saying nothing. If you're going to say you told me so, Angelica told her brother, let's not and say we did. Raj imitated Sparks's shrug. Shitting hell, he said philosophically. I don't know what to do either. This is crazy, but the old man's done us right so far. They walked out through the Casablanca dining room. The owner, a short woman whose name Angelica always forgot, stood in the doorway, twisting her chef's hat in 2 hands. Angelica made an effort to smile and left it to her brother to pay the woman off. He caught up to her a few minutes later at a jog. So, what's the plan, sister dear? I'm going to talk to John Feeney, that's the plan. Maybe Mary can help me get through that skull of his. Maybe, Raj said in an odd tone of voice. Angelica looked at him, but his expression didn't betray anything. The thing is, what's the old man going to do, eh? Joff won't slice him open again, the other guy won't slice him open at all. Pushing him out the airlock's no good. Maybe load him up on a ship and make him somebody else's problem. I thought you were friends. Best pals, he said, and meant it. The elevator opened for them. and they made for the Galleria deck. "I think it'll all blow over me. I think it'll all blow over me. I think the battery in that thing won't last, and then he'll be giving me shit for letting him do it in the first place." Angelica gave him a look. Didn't have a clue. Cross my heart and hope to snuff it. But he'll say I did when he's got a dead lump of metal under his skin. Angelica fell silent, listening to the slow elevator rumble. "What about the dead man's switch? Anything we can do about that? Who made it?" Sparky. "What?" She stared at her brother. "Are you kidding me? After all the trouble she's stirring up over this?" Raj laughed. "That's why. He told her it was for a grenade, and she figured that was all right. When she found out, whew!" The doors opened, and they strolled toward the Galleria. She didn't want to continue the conversation with people around, though there weren't many tourists and they weren't paying attention. By unspoken agreement, they made for home at the hotel. Angelica deep in thought, and Raj strolling without a care in the world, hands shoved in pockets and attempting badly to whistle. Angelica froze at the top of the big staircase to the hotel lobby. Wilfred and that buddy of his, the dishwasher, stood loitering out front, passing a bottle between them and a couple of his other pals. Wilfred Feeney was a tall, skinny kid, and lately he'd taken to wearing all black. Slacks, a tuxedo jacket, and a top hat, but with no shirt, so that the big, ugly thing under the skin of his chest pushed out obscenely. It blinked blue and red through his stretched, pale skin with the angry red scars that bristled with sutures. "What's the deal, brother?" Wilfred sounded surprised and hurt, and it took Angelica a panicked moment to realize that he wasn't talking to Raj or her, but to a big, beefy-looking guy in gray spacer's togs coming out of the hotel, some trucker chewing his thumbnail as he ambled through. He didn't seem to realize he was being addressed until Wilfred stepped out in front of him, getting right in the guy's face. "I'm talking to you, brother. What's the deal?" "Shit," Raj muttered. "What the hell are you talking about?" grumbled the trucker, taking a step back and giving the kid a confused look. "You bit your thumb at me, bruv. That's not nice. I think you ought to apologize." The dishwasher chortled and took a long swig. "I didn't do shit," said the trucker. "Get out of my face." He walked around Wilfred, putting his forearm out as a guide. Wilfred sprang back as if struck, and his top hat fell and rolled. "What the blazes, brother? First you make obscene gestures, and now you hit me. What's your game? What did I ever do to you?" Angelica looked at Raj, a sense of panic welling up in her. Raj's face was wooden as he watched. "I didn't hit nobody, brother, but if you don't piss off, I'm gonna." Wilfred got up in his face, and the guy threw a punch. Wilfred sprang back, untouched and laughing his fool head off. Angelica felt sick with adrenaline, and then she saw the guy pull a knife. "Raj!" Her brother had already shot into action, as did the dishwasher, whose face had gone from stoned amusement to horror. They tried to get in between Wilfred and the trucker, but the two were both eager for a fight. The trucker got the dishwasher with a punch and went for Raj with the knife, but Raj danced out of the way and grabbed at the guy's arm. Wilfred took the opportunity to land what looked like a solid punch in the gut. The trucker stumbled and staggered back, and Angelica saw blood spread dark across his gray jumpsuit. Wilfred had knifed him. Roaring, the wounded trucker sprang up, free of Raj's grip. Bellowing rage, he went for the laughing fool with his own blade up. Shouts of panic and warning came from all around them, and Angelica stood rooted to the spot, frozen in terror. Wilfred stood his ground, grinning like this was the best fun in the world. And then, suddenly, the trucker bent back, eyes wide. Raj's other hand came around, and he slashed the man's throat from behind. They both fell hard. Angelica dove to her knees, pulled the dying man away, and grabbed hold of her brother, dazed but alive. They both shook as she helped him to his feet, just as a pair of security guards rushed up. "This fellow attacked me," sniffed Wilfred. "Made an obscene gesture and attacked me. With a knife." He gestured dramatically at the big man bleeding out on the deck in a wide circle of horrified onlookers. "Why, if my good friend wasn't here to step in, things could have really blown up." He snickered, and his stoned, nervous-looking buddy half-heartedly chuckled along.
"I'm sorry for the trouble, Mr. Feeney,"
one of the station guards managed. Angelica stared at him.
We'll take it from here."
He looked back at her as Wilfred sauntered away.
"Ms. Del Rio, sorry to ask, is that what happened?"
She couldn't spare a glance for her blood-soaked brother.
Yes,
she said, summoning her iciest voice. "Of course it is. You're lucky my brother was here, or young Mr. Feeney would have been hurt." The guard blanched. Word had gotten around among security, she gathered. They didn't even have their stun batons out, probably worried what might happen. They went to help Raj, who waved them off, heaving. He staggered, and she caught her breath. But he shook his head and managed a weak laugh.
"I'm fine, but I could use a drink."
He looked down into the lobby, where past a knot of people was the promise of a well-stocked hotel bar. Angelica nodded. "I'm sure you don't need us, officer, but we'll be downstairs in Amanogawa." She steered her brother down the stairs through the onlookers. He leaned on her and was as easily led as if he was dead drunk already. The Japanese restaurant wasn't too busy, and she shooed a couple away from the end of the bar so that she could make him sit with nobody nearby. The frowning bartender came out, and he put on a poker face when he recognized them. "Vodka," she said. "Make it a double."
"Make it two,"
Raj managed. The bartender nodded, and 2 shot glasses appeared almost instantaneously. Raj threw his back and blew out a long sigh, putting his elbows on the bar top and his head in his hands. "Are you all right?" she murmured. They were attracting stares, or the growing puddle of blood under his bar stool was.
"Fine," he said. "Fine."
He grinned, and anyone else in the universe would have believed him. He picked up the empty blood-smeared shot glass absent-mindedly, and the hand holding it trembled. He saw her looking, pushed it away, and rubbed his face with both hands.
"That was close, eh?"
Angelica couldn't respond. She felt sick, almost dizzy. She hadn't intended to order a drink for herself, but it suddenly seemed like a damned good idea. She picked it up with 3 shaking fingers and knocked it back. It went down smooth, just a burn in her throat and a warmth in her unsettled belly.
"I want to get out of here," she said.
He nodded.
"I might need a minute."
"No, out of here. Out of all of it."
He looked at her in surprise.
"The station? The hell for?"
"You could have been killed. Both of us. All of us. That stupid laughing son of a bitch, he'd have been delighted."
Raj shook his head.
"We've built up a lot here. Feeney's been good to us.
And he got a faraway look for a moment, then just shook his head again.
"You're my only brother, Raj."
"I want to stay,"
he managed. She stared.
"Why? God, why? What is there here to stay for?"
"Never mind," he said. He put on that grin of his again, and she knew that she'd shut down that window of vulnerability. Whatever he was thinking, he wouldn't share.
"It's not so bad. And why should we get pushed off?"
"Feeney's never going to do anything about his grandson," she said.
Raj leaned in toward her. His grin was gone, and he looked her in the eyes.
"Maybe Feeney shouldn't be the one deciding, eh?"
She sat back, looked around to see if anyone might be listening in. She shook her head, but even she knew it was just a reflex.
"They'd go along with it,"
he said, his low voice urgent.
"Most of them, anyway. You've been with them forever, Angelica. You're practically family. It's different coming from you."
"Practically family isn't family.
Not since Jack died. Anyway, what if we do force him to act? What happens after that?
Raj shrugged. We'll burn that bridge when we get to it. She stared into her empty shot glass, then swiveled in her seat. She couldn't see the casino from the back of the bar, but its lights reflected off the tables in the Galleria. After a long while in silence, she made a call. "Hey, Shine," she said when he answered.
I'm busy. What do you need?
"The High Roller Suite still open?"
This morning. Haven't cleaned it yet.
"That's fine. I need it."
How long?
She glanced toward the hotel and its magnetic pull. "A few days should be enough. Just a few days."
Takata's in a good mood.
Kenichi Takata laughed as the miner sulked over a free beer.
Cheer up, he said. Cheer up, he said.
No. He waved her off, smiling indulgently. He had good reason to smile after the miner watched him sell off a solid chunk of his beer, liquor, and wine supply. When he contacted his supplier to reorder, the poor woman had been shocked, having assumed after so long that he'd died. Then he'd had to assure her repeatedly that he hadn't been dallying with another distributor.
You and Herrera both, you'd think we were leaking atmosphere.
Herrera, in his booth, snorted.
It won't last. You don't want it to last. I don't want it to start.
Takata whipped his bar towel at some speck of dust the miner couldn't see.
Why are you so unhappy, Herrera? No more fighting. That's what you wanted, right? We're back where we started. They're palling around and plotting all their new crimes. I don't care what they say. Those two are still in charge behind the scenes. And Anaconda gets everything it wants, those corrupt, filth-sucking sons of incontinent tapeworms. I thought you were going to kill them all. What happened to that? 100,000 credits. I told you.
Takata frowned the first time in hours.
She sure as hell tried, you have to admit. They're still cleaning up bodies. The robots are half broken down, and the waste pipes are clogged with I don't want to know what. Sure, kill the underlings,
Herrera grumbled.
That's practically what they're for. You just saved the king and queen some money on their pay, that's all. They get to start fresh.
The miner thought about pointing out that the drug lab had been firebombed and a major local source of piracy vented into space, but she didn't feel so great about those anyway.
So when are you getting the hell out of here?
Takata asked, and made it sound friendly. Tomorrow, she said. The port's locked down while the company rep's yacht is docked. Anyway, McMasters is keeping my ship clamped until after their reception as a guarantee for good behavior. She could probably have done something about that, but with the sides playing nice, she didn't figure she had a lot of room to negotiate. The security squad had polished their black armor and seemed to not have a lot to do.
You didn't have to throw their money back in their faces, Takata said. You ought to have kept some of it.
Didn't want to owe them. Seems smart now. Takata didn't seem to take notice of her reply, so she drank her beer. It was good beer. He kept cleaning, humming as he went back, and came out with a mop.
Jesus, are you mopping? Herrera asked. Did you have a stroke? No, damn your eyes, I didn't have a stroke. I'm going to have customers. Just you see. They'll settle down and wipe the blood off the Galleria.
And the ports, added the miner.
And all the fucking walls, decks, hatches, and plumbing, contributed Herrera with a leer. They'll wipe the blood off the Galleria, Takata repeated over him, and the people will come back. And when they come back, they'll want to eat, and I'm going to be the only game in town. And just to show you that I forgive all your ingratitude and warmongering and a truly ridiculous amount of just flat-out murdering people, I'm going to make you two dinner tonight. All right?
I'll check my calendar, Herrera said with a grin, holding his empty whiskey glass up to the light. Hey, look, I can pencil you in.
Thank you, the miner said. I'd like that.
They were interrupted by a rap on the tile. The miner turned to see Feeney standing alone. He wore nice clothes, and his silver hair was clean and slicked back, and he'd shaved. He held a silver-topped walking stick where he'd banged it on the deck. "Hello, Mickey dear." He glanced up behind her and waved a hand. "No need for a drink, barkeep. I'm not staying. I just felt the need to come over and say hello, and no hard feelings." The miner raised an eyebrow, then raised her glass of beer in a half-toast. He smiled and leaned in. "I also came to say, in my official role of grandfather of the bride, to kindly stay the fuck away from my granddaughter's reception, you damnable banshee. The sooner you shake this station's dust from your feet, the better." He smiled, kind and grandfatherly, and held the cane topper up to his forehead with a wink or in a salute or farewell, and then turned sharply on his heel and strolled away, humming. I could do that better. "I also came to say, in my official role of grandfather of the bride, to kindly stay the fuck away from my granddaughter's reception, you damnable banshee. The sooner you shake this station's dust from your feet, the better." He smiled, kind and grandfatherly, and held the cane topper up to his forehead with a wink, in a salute or farewell, and then turned sharply on his heel and strolled away, humming. Okonomiyaki. Takata suppressed a grin as he poked his head through the curtain to look around the restaurant. The miner and Herrera looked back at him, and when he saw that the rest of the bar was empty, he set to work closing the shutters, and then he excitedly waved them into the kitchen. His guests exchanged looks, shrugged at each other, then ambled around the bar into the back, drinks still in hand. "Ta-da!" Takata said, whipping a white dish towel off a shriveled-looking fist-sized green and white ball in the palm of his hand. He beamed at it like he'd given birth to it. Herrera tilted his head. "You dragged us back here to show us a cabbage?" "Yes." His elation dimmed. "Look, asshole, when's the last time you saw a fresh cabbage? Never, that's when." Herrera shrugged. "I'm not a cabbage guy." "You will be when I'm done with you. You, Mick, you're quiet. No dry wit, no cutting remark." The miner shrugged. "Just trying to remember the last time I saw a cabbage. I thought they were bigger." Takata huffed and set it down on the counter, then turned around and flipped the griddle on to the highest setting. "Cost me a bottle of real wine just to get Mr. Shine to grow that dinky little thing. I was going to let it go longer, but I'm in the mood to celebrate. Anyway, you're getting a free dinner out of it, so what do you want?" "No complaints from me," she said, smiling. "Little cabbage it is, and I'll be glad to have it." Takata got out a sharp knife and held it in one hand as he examined the fist-sized vegetable in the other, turning it this way and that with a faint, almost blissful smile on his face. Then he lay it on the white plastic cutting board and plunged the knife in, pulling the base down to the board with a thunk, and splitting the head neatly in half. A V-cut on the first half excised the core, which he set aside. Then he repositioned the half and started slicing. He was fast with the knife, and it must have been sharp as hell. The miner watched with interest as he worked the blade up and down, almost rocking, feeding the half-head into it and producing slivers of crisp green flesh that held the half-ball shape as they got pushed down on the board. Strands pushed themselves up in a traffic jam behind the blade, splintering, and then in 30 seconds he was done. He turned the whole board 90 degrees and crunched the knife through the splintered pile once, twice, then scooped it all up and dumped it in a bowl. There was a ring at the back door, and Takata yelled a welcome without looking up. Dr. Mills stood in the entryway, looking sheepish. "I hope I'm not late." He held up a canister and said, "I don't have any sake, but I thought a dry white wine might go well with it." "Sure," Takata said. "Sure, Takata said. Sure, 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 Takata said. I don't have that either, so I brought Plonk, Mills said with a mischievous smile, setting the canister on a work table. Even better. Mills peered over the cook's shoulder at the cutting board as he sidled by in the tight space, and took the stool next to Herrera. Good to see you again, he told him, and nodded politely to the miner as well. Takata was already halfway through the second half cabbage, producing an even slaw that he chopped roughly again and dumped in the bowl. Then he got to work finely dicing the core, and it went in too. He turned to the little herb garden under a sun lamp on the far bulkhead, taking a pair of scissors to a trio of spindly, foreshortened green onions, and returning with 2 finger-lengths worth cradled in his palm. He sliced them and dumped them in with the cabbage. My grandfather used to make this for me when I was a kid, he said as he chopped. A little different back then. Easier to get stuff, and I was a spoiled brat who didn't appreciate handmade food. He gave his audience a meaningful look, but they didn't take the bait. He snorted. I've been craving it for ages. And telling me about it for at least that long, Dr. Mills said. It's become myth. It is mythical in nature, Takata said. From the fridge he got a jar of red strands. The miner caught a whiff of ginger when he opened it, fished out a bundle with his fingers, and got to chopping them. How's tricks? Herrera asked Mills, who only shrugged. Slowed down. I ducked the excitement as long as I could, but, well, duty calls. Takata got a second bowl from under the counter and sifted a good amount of flour into it. It's bulked out with Jiminy, he warned, but his guests shrugged. The miner had probably eaten her weight in crickets and mealworms out of service rations alone, and who knew what was in emergency rations? Takata sprinkled in some salt and other powders from the little dented canisters stuck to the side of his work table with magnets. The bowl of seasoned flour was whisked. Then Takata brought it over to a spigot marked Yegg, White and Yolk Mix, which is, for what it's worth, spelled capital Y, capital E, lowercase gg, exclamation point, WHYTE, ampersand, Y umlauted O LK mix. Yegg, White and Yolk Mix, and opened it to glug in a good amount of mucus-like yellow and clear fluid. The miner had once had a Yegg brand yeast incubator long ago, and she had considered it tolerable as long as she didn't dwell on what she was really eating scrambled on toast, but the stupid thing was too finicky to keep operational, and it stank to high heaven when bacteria infected the batch. She'd had to jettison the whole incubator, and sometimes still gagged when reminded of it too strongly. Takata was already pouring water into the bowl, carefully measured from a battered metal cup. This ought to be stock, he apologized, but I haven't had dashi powder in months. I'm heartbroken, Herrera said. Good. Working a handful at a time, he massaged the shredded cabbage into the batter, stirring and frowning as it all went into the bowl. Then running his hand around the edge to get every last shred. When it was all mixed in and glistening yellow and green, he turned to the griddle and let a few drops fall from his spoon to the surface, where they sizzled and popped. He nodded once, satisfied. I know you don't do pork, he said to Mills. The beef okay with you for the fake egg? I mean, it's all fake, but the principle, right? Mills shrugged. Sure, thanks for asking. What about the rest of you? Fake pork belly all right? It's not horrible. Used to be a pig millions of years ago, probably. Some bastard pig nobody liked. When's the last time they tested those vats for staph or E. coli? Herrera muttered. Never. That's when. That a no on the pork? I'll live dangerously. What's dangerous is insulting my cooking. You? He pointed a battered finger at the miner. I'll eat anything. Good answer. He stopped short and looked at her suspiciously. I think. 3 strips of pink and white striped something went on the grill, slap, slap, slap in a row. Then, after a moment, a ruddier strip followed. They sizzled, and the air filled with the heady scent of cooking meat. The miner tried to remember the last time she'd watched a meal prepared, and couldn't. It had been ages since she gave up on the galley and just ate emergency rations. Small mounds of cabbage batter went on top of the shriveling and twisting strips of vat-grown meat, carefully shaped with a spoon and a pair of chopsticks, then gently flattened into cakes. Toccata flipped off the ventilation fan over the stove for a moment and breathed it in with a self-satisfied smile. Wheat batter, frying cabbage, cooking meat. Using a pair of broad metal spatulas, he went down the line, digging under each palm-sized disc from both sides, and then with a little whoop under his breath, he flipped them. The brown and black spotted tops of the pancakes steamed gently until he squirted a deep red sauce over the top each in a lace pattern. The sauce dribbled over the sides and hissed and bubbled as the aroma of burning sugar and soy sauce overpowered the rest, and he turned the fan back on. Onto the sauce went mayonnaise from another bottle in a cross lace, then a fine green powder. The miner's stomach rumbled, and she realized that she'd gotten very hungry watching him cook. His 3 guests watched in silence, rapt. For 4 blue square plates came out from under the workstation, and a pancake went onto each with another maneuver of the 2 metal spatulas and another little whoop, whoop. The first went to Mills, then Herrera, then the miner. Toccata switched off the grill top before plating his own, and turned his back on its steaming surface as he dragged over a stool. Each of them received a pair of chopsticks and a little spade-looking instrument with the metal printer's ridges here and there along the handles. Looked like someone had flattened a spoon and then snipped the front of the bowl off. "Itadakimasu," he said cheerily, and dug in, cutting with the spade in neat downward motions and eating with the chopsticks. He sat back after the first bite, a look of bliss on his face. He pounded the table lightly with his fist. "Damn," he said, swallowing. "This is it exactly. Spot fucking on." The miner ate carefully. It was still steaming hot and delicious. Salty, crunchy, sweet, spicy. The cabbage partly steamed and partly fried, the nutty cooked batter, the sweet sauce, and a sharp earthy note from the ginger and onion. The reverent silence broke when Dr. Mills remembered his wine. Toccata fetched some cups, and they split it 4 ways. They toasted each other wordlessly with their translucent plastic cups, and the miner had a sip of grape-like engine cleaner with a hint of oak. She smiled and murmured a thank you to the doctor. "I used to be able to get huge cabbages," Toccata said, "as big as your head." "Here we go again," Herrera muttered into his dinner. "Maybe not your head, a normal person's head. Man, I could make this every day. I could put it on the menu." "You want Feeney back in charge so you have cabbage. So you can have cabbage. Would that be so damn bad?" Toccata slapped his chopsticks down with a loud click. "Would it really? Yeah, I hated paying his protection money, but it was a hell of a lot better than all that bullshit." "He's why we had all that bullshit. It was fool's gold." The miner ignored their argument to focus on the food. Good food. Hot food. The argument made it better somehow, brought her back to mess halls a million years ago, family dinner tables long before that, all the little fights over stupid points of trivia or policy or pride. Her mind wandered back to the grinning idiots in her old photos, and to her surprise she found herself blinking back a tear. "Don't drag me into this," Mills was saying. "I don't like any of it." "You did the marriage," Toccata accused. "2 young people asked me to marry them, and yes, I did. I'd do it again for any 2 people who asked." He looked meaningfully at Toccata and Herrera, and when they both harumphed and refused to take the bait, he focused on the miner. "I was surprised to see you there, by the way. I half believed that after I left, those 2 wouldn't get out of there alive." She shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "Good thing you only half believed it." "Best thing you could have done," Herrera said sourly. "Those assholes would have killed each other off, let us start over. We'd have had some real peace. Now they're just regrouping." "The peace of the grave," Toccata said. "The peace of justice.
You think just because they're not out punching and shooting each other that there's peace? Violence underpins everything they do. It's there even if they're not fighting. It's just aimed at everyone like a squash spring. Who's gonna get fucked next?
Takata waved his hand like he was swatting at a gnat. That's just crap. There's tension in any system. People just plain don't like each other. You'll never remove all your violent underpinnings, and that's the kind of shit you get when you try. Some jackass set off a nuclear weapon for the love of God. Some jackass set off a nuclear weapon for the love of God.
Mills met the miner's eye with a speculative look. But she let Takata's speech wash over them.
People aren't perfectible, Herrera. They're assholes. They're always gonna be assholes.
Herrera scoffed, but Takata interrupted him, pointing a finger in his face.
But the trick is that they're lazy assholes. You get people invested in peace, see the benefits for themselves. They like to stay that way. I'm going to try that again. But the trick is that they're lazy assholes. You get people invested in peace, see the benefits for themselves. They like to stay that way. Then you work at it. You improve. That's how you get justice, not by blowing everything up. Every so-called peace like that is on somebody's back, and that poor son of a bitch gets repeatedly fucked, while the people who have it good tinker with making things a little bit better every day, or whatever bullshit slogan, and congratulate each other on how nice they're making everything, how well-dressed and polite that Feeney chap is, and isn't it nice he stopped shanking people in public?
That's rich. You hear that, Doc?
Mills looked surprised and started to say, "Don't look at me," but Takata talked over him.
You've never been the poor son of a bitch, Herrera. You bitch and moan, but you drew a government salary this whole time.
Herrera's face reddened.
You'd have ridden out months more fighting with no problem, but me, I'm at the end of my rope here. Those anaconda assholes won't care that I'm not making rent because they screwed every pooch that walked by. They just care that I'm not making rent. I'd have helped, Herrera muttered. I don't want help. I want customers. Customers are predictable. I know what they want, and that's a decent dinner with as many cheap drinks as they can pour down their gullets. And if I piss one or two off, they go away and another few show up. Just look just like them. I don't have to worry, oh, I offended that one guy and now I'll starve. You do if that one guy is John Feeney, or Angelica Del Rio, or Tom McMasters.
Takata made a scornful face.
I don't care what those crooks think of me. What? And you suddenly care what I think of you?
The two arguers went suddenly quiet. Dr. Mills pursed his lips and raised his eyebrows. Then their faces both went dark, and they started yelling over each other. The miner leaned her elbows against the counter behind her, lost track of the conversation, and just enjoyed the bickering. Takata and Herrera cutest couple for real. The bride wore red. The noise irritated the miner. Gunfire, malfunctioning machinery, the squeal of a bearing failing at a high temperature, none of these bothered her, except at an intellectual level. But dozens of people trying to talk over each other in a party setting, that grated on her nerves like nothing else. She would rather have been anywhere else, but Takata had prevailed on her to stick around and be a good sport, and had come through with good beer and grilled skewers of something out of the vats that went down well with the second beer especially. Out in the Galleria, a throng of thugs, fighters, gamblers, and goons milled awkwardly under her baleful glare, socializing with people who'd been trying to kill them not very long ago. The miner would have enjoyed their discomfort if it weren't for the noise, and if she weren't feeling so sour about the whole thing. Feeney presided in some kind of ancient black tie get-up, talking and joking with Angelica, who stood a good quarter-meter taller than him with her black hair plaited in a fancy braid, over a dress so matte black it seemed like a hole in the crowd. She resembled a mortician in both dress and demeanor, especially in contrast to the naturally exuberant old man. The only cracks in his genial confidence were his occasional death-ray glares at the miner. That kid Corbell, who had been at the makeshift wedding, hovered near the old man and looked like he hadn't slept. Taller than Feeney and darker in both color and demeanor, he resembled a storm cloud following the glad-handing old gangster around. The couple, who had already been married but who nonetheless consented to a party, and gifts, hadn't made their appearance yet. They seemed to want to make an entrance, probably waiting until the assembly was good and drunk. Mr. Shine had shown up. He looked relaxed in the tuxedo he'd worn in the old photos, delicately holding a martini glass that he occasionally sipped from and grimaced. Finn's vodka hadn't gone to waste. The miner could make out a whiff like engine cleaner every time the air circulator patterns changed. He should have been making a mint, and instead he was dead. She didn't even know how he died. The goons had left their weapons behind, and looked distinctly ill at ease without them. Still, alcohol and stronger stuff seemed to be propelling them towards something resembling social grace. That nobody seemed to be enjoying themselves didn't appease the miner in the slightest.
"See, look at them," Takata said. "They don't really want to fight."
Not each other, maybe, Herrera said. They're all jelly-livered chicken shits. They'll be happy to beat up miners and shake down your customers, though, don't worry.
That's what McMasters is for.
Huh, Fuckstash is gonna get shit-canned now Anaconda doesn't need him. The minute those two kissed and made up, he became a liability. Hell, I bet Feeney's already over there saying, Now about those loans, Tom. Mark my words, he is out the airlock the minute somebody has a half-decent excuse. It might even be him with the excuse once he figures out Feeney and Angelica won't pay him off no more.
Takata brushed him off with an indulgent smile, then dashed back into the kitchen to retrieve another plate of skewered vat meat. He'd been cooking non-stop, and had done some damn fine work, the miner thought, with scant ingredients. At the crack of mid-morning, a bunch of surly goons had descended on the restaurant and been made to each wash their hands under Takata's close supervision, some of them twice. Mr. Shine had brought up loads of sad-looking pale vegetables that had flopped pathetically in their crates, but Takata had been ecstatic to see them anyway. They'd shaken hands like old friends, and the former casino boss had given the miner a long, thoughtful look before leaving without exchanging words with her. The vegetables had been chopped and sautéed, bandages applied liberally. Dozens of little mealworm flour pastry cups full of cooked fake egg with tiny bits of irregularly chopped vegetables had gone out, along with lots of the charred skewers of vat meat with sauce, a lot of little pancake things with little bundles of shredded vegetation with a vinegary smell, and some little wrap things. Food had emerged from the casino and hotel kitchens, too, looking to the miner like reheated frozen stuff. The miner caught a glimpse of McMasters in his black uniform, neatly pressed with everything shinable shined, escorting a frail-looking woman with expensive jewelry and the haunted look of a gazelle who'd wandered into a nature documentary.
"The company rep," Takata said in her ear. "I'm surprised she's here. Usually she hangs out in her yacht, hooked up to her VR rig all day, trying to be anywhere else but here. I'm amazed she can still walk."
The miner heard him, but wasn't listening. Something about McMaster's posture bugged her, and as she watched him, she became convinced that he was seriously on edge. He wasn't escorting the rep so much as steering her like a gaudy wheelbarrow, in a spiral away from the center of the crowd. "Something's up," she said, and was interrupted by the crowd's first real enthusiasm. Mary and Raj had emerged onto the balcony from Feeney's hotel. They looked good, cleaned up and groomed, and both wearing neat black clothes. The light glinted off of Mary's spike implants and the iridescent scales at Raj's temples, and they beamed down at the crowd. For their part, the goons filling the Galleria seemed genuinely glad to see them, to the tune of whooping whistles, catcalls, and hollering of all sorts. Feeney tried to say something, but even amplified by a public address system was drowned out.
He shrugged at Angelica, who gave him a chilly but tolerant shrug in return. Then he laughed and turned and clapped. The miner lost track of McMasters and the rep in the crowd and couldn't see Mr. Shine. The lights went completely out. The miner's artificial eye recovered so fast that she was more clued in by the startled and dismayed crowd's reaction than by the darkness. A single shot ran out in the dark, and Raj's head exploded in a burst of red mist. The occupants of the Galleria took a deep collective breath, and then, collectively and completely, lost their shit. Water belongs in that tube for sure. You don't need that one. Not at all. Après le déluge. Screwball had been looking directly at the old man when the lights went down. Otherwise, he'd never have been able to find him when the shot fired. He clapped his arm around a slight form and for a second thought he'd gotten the wrong person, until he caught a gasp of sour breath and heard Feeney exclaim. He felt frail in the dark, and his bones were palpable under the nice suit. They both tensed when they heard someone wail. "Mary!" Feeney whispered, and then shouted it. "Mary!" The crowd around them started to jostle and shout, and someone elbowed Screwball hard in the back. "Shh!" Screwball pulled Feeney in close. "I need to get you out of here." "Mary! Whoever's shooting might be coming for you. Keep your voice down." He started to make out shapes in the dark and started to shepherd the old gangster towards the edge of the Galleria. They'd been right in the thick of things, waiting for Mary and Raj to come out. Was that Mary making that noise? And the closest way out was towards the restaurant. There was a scream of pain from close by, and the distinct sound of a fist hitting flesh. Scuffles in the dark turned into an all-out brawl, and Screwball struggled to keep moving as people and chairs bashed into him. He stumbled when something hard cracked against his shin, and he swore loudly but didn't pull Feeney down. The old man's arm went up behind his back, and they stabilized each other as they got knocked and tossed around, but still managed to make progress as they could both see better. "The Galleria is on lockdown," boomed a voice above their heads. Screwball cringed, more from the surprise, but his ears rang with it. "Leave the vicinity immediately." The message repeated, and suddenly there were thunderous clanging noises all around them, deafening for all they seemed to be coming from everywhere at once. There was a sharp scream from the other side of the Galleria, silenced just as quickly. "The shutters!" Feeney yelled in his ear. Emergency lights circling the area glowed red, casting everything in crimson and deep shadow, and he could see for himself that their exit path was cut off. They pushed their way past the last few people between them and the outside wall, and stood for a moment next to someone curled on the deck, clutching her head and rocking. Behind them, Screwball heard more screams and a sinister electrical crackle. Blue flashes reflected off glass and chrome, seeming to come from everywhere. Feeney shook loose and took off toward the hotel. Screwball dashed after him and tried to run interference as the crowd shoved and heaved, trying to get away from the security officers and their stun batons, but not knowing where they were. They reached the stairs, and Screwball wasn't shy about pulling stunned fighters out of their way, even hurling them down the steps, and then they were at the top, and there was Mary, cradling Raj's body and sobbing. Off to their right, the hotel's doors stood wide open without their shutters. He turned to the left and saw across the scattering crowd of partiers that the casino doors were open too. Feeney was shaking his granddaughter by the shoulders, but she shook her head violently and only clutched Raj tighter. "I have to get out," was the only bit Screwball heard. Then there was a tug on his arm. "Help me!" It took some gesturing for Screwball to realize that he was being asked to move the body. He retched when he saw Raj's wrecked face, and again when he slipped in the blood, invisible in the red lights, and landed painfully on his knee.
Gagging on the strong smell of blood and shit, he still managed to get his arms under Raj's armpits, and then drag the corpse backward. The noise from the Galleria fell away quickly as he got traction and made it into the lobby. Stumbling and staggering people made it in behind them, coming first in a trickle and then all at once. "Get the poor boy up off the floor," he heard Feeney say, and a couple pairs of hands were suddenly assisting him. There were some moments of confusion until someone said, "There's a coffee table," and then that became Raj Del Rio's resting place. Mary sunk to her knees in front of it, put her arms and head on his still chest, and Screwball saw in the bluish hotel light that she was sticky with the blood from head to toe. So was he. There was a rattling metallic noise. He turned and saw the hotel shutters finally coming down. It had a calming effect on the crowd. Maybe 36 people stood dazed in the Ad Astra lobby, and slowly it dawned on them that they weren't all on the same side. Screwball didn't recognize a lot of the faces, but he did see one unexpected one. Mr. Shine, standing a head taller than a lot of the others, sporting a blossoming black eye and cradling his left arm, had taken a position next to Feeney. The old man had stumbled back and was fending off Shine's attempts to engage him earnestly. "Well, who could be calling me?" he said too loudly, like he was proud of himself. "What do you want, witch?" He grinned up at a frowning Shine and slurred, "Oh, it's only Angelica, whose brother is beastly dead." The grumbling grew louder at that, and thankfully Mary seemed not to have heard it. "Enough!" someone shouted as the mutual glares and mutterings started to progress to shoving, and Screwball was astonished to find that the someone was himself. But when they turned to look at him in surprise and irritation, he balled his hands. His heart pounded in sudden panic at being the center of attention, but he kept shouting anyway, "Knock it off! We're stuck here and nobody gives a shit who you work for. You're all assholes, you're all even. So quit whatever. Just chill out, all right?" "Nice speech, dipshit," someone muttered, but the fighting didn't resume. People stared at their boots, stared at Mary, stared at him. But they didn't fight. Screwball's heart was still racing, and he took a moment to let the shock of adrenaline wear off. He looked around for Feeney, but the old man and Mr. Shine were gone. Aftermath. Takata's angry rant trailed off after about 10 minutes, after the noise outside the steel shutters finally died down. He'd variously accused the miner, Herrera, McMasters, Feeney, Angelica, and several supernatural entities of engineering this catastrophe, singly and in unlikely partnerships. All of their rationales, however, were aimed at personally ruining him and his chances of making it off station with 2 pennies to rub together. Herrera had the good graces to try to not look too triumphant, and the miner was too puzzled to be either offended or amused. "McMasters knew something was up," she offered when the rant subsided. Herrera nodded. "He had his whole crew suited up and ready to go." Takata waved the comment away. "He probably figured it would turn into a riot the minute anyone spilled a drink. I don't like the son of a bitch, but I have to admit, he was prepared." The miner stared at the steel shutters. They weren't the security shutters Takata used every night, but looked heavier and better reinforced. "Are those airtight? Do we have an oxygen supply in here?" "Yes, both. I don't know if there's any oxygen in it, so maybe we'll all die like the 2 of you seem to want. So, good luck with that. Anyway, they're intended for a hull breach, but I have to admit they're pretty good for crowd control." Takata poured himself half a tumbler full of something clear, and sat heavily at a table away from the miner and Herrera. Judging by his wince at the first sip, the miner didn't think it was water. For her own part, the miner was busy thinking. She looked down at her sword, and mistrusted it for the task. The gloves were well and truly off now, and she wanted at least a sidearm, if not her rifle.
She tried to communicate with her ship, but the station comms were down, and she was too far for a direct link. She couldn't even get a ping response off it. Why would someone have risked shooting Raj in public like that? She wondered aloud.
You'd have done it,
Takata said morosely, not looking up from his drink.
It's a good idea, Herrera contributed. Dog-blowing little turd fondler had it coming.
Maybe, but I didn't do it. Someone had a decent low light, good aim, and a good spot to shoot from. And an accomplice, probably, to turn off the lights and defeat the anti-projectile systems. And a damn good reason. Takata snorted.
Trying to figure out which side did it so you can go work for them? It's not either one of those two, Herrera said. Think about it. Who wants to keep Feeney and Del Rio fighting and isn't worried about McMasters picking sides? Other than you two psychos, Mr. Shine doesn't care. Psycho number 1 here seems to think he's the heir apparent. Maybe he didn't like being dethroned.
Herrera scowled.
Why does she get to be psycho number 1?
The miner interrupted whatever Takata was about to say. Do you think the back entrance is unblocked? Takata stared up at her with undisguised suspicion. He'd put a dent in the drink already, and his face was becoming flushed.
Just can't wait to join the fun, huh? Not enough blood already? You want to get back to juggling death and destruction?
To Herrera, he said,
That's why she gets to be psycho number 1.
She let it go. A couple suspicions of her own were gnawing at her. She got up and went. The small kitchen had been emptied of helpers when the party started, but the bots were still out and cleaning up. The back hatch stood closed and stayed closed when she tapped the panel.
Looks like it's locked down too,
Takata said behind her.
Sorry.
He didn't sound sorry. She frowned at the panel. The unlock option was still there at the bottom, despite the lockdown. She tapped it and heard a clunk. The door opened freely. She and Takata exchanged looks, and then before her better sense could catch up, she slipped out into the corridor. Housekeeping. The miner made straight for the docks, and wasn't surprised to find the back corridors empty. She had seen the dockmaster at the party, so wasn't worried about running into him, but didn't know when he might find his way back, so she ran. The main entrance was wide open, and the docks were empty of people. She didn't want to dally, but she still took the time to duck into the control booth. Finding his terminal open and on, she unlocked it, thinking to release the docking clamps on her ship. The company rep's yacht was gone already. Hers was the only ship docked. She paused when she found that they'd already been released, and dug a little deeper into the interface, once she'd had to lean in a hurry. She paused when she found that they'd already been released, and dug a little deeper into the interface, one she'd had to learn in a hurry once on a mission. Glancing up through the window from time to time, she ran through the menus and found something. A notification attached to her ship's entry. She didn't have time to dig too deep, but it looked like it would send a message to some location she couldn't decipher the moment her ship's airlock opened. She backed out of the entry for her ship's docking bay, and after a moment of study, she found that the neighboring bay was out of commission for repairs. After a moment's thought, she swapped their IDs in the system. Bay 5 with her ship attached showed up as defunct Bay 4, which meant that attempting to clamp Bay 5 would harmlessly set them next door, just in case someone changed their mind. More importantly, opening the Bay 5 airlock wouldn't notify anyone. Satisfied, she used the terminal to shut the main entrance doors and give herself a little cover. Then she went to the hatch leading to the airlock for her ship. She tapped the direct link and found that her ship wasn't responding to voice commands, but she could override it from the panel and open the airlock. She slipped in and shut the dockside hatch behind her. The miner stopped short when the shipside hatch opened. The cargo bay had been ransacked. All the ties and covers had been pulled off her equipment, and the equipment itself shoved out of place. Stacked pieces had been toppled, leaving broken bits of plastic and metal strewn on the decking.
Her heart pounded, and she could feel her implants tighten, signaled by her rising anger. This wasn't a search. A good search didn't look like this. It was too easy to block things the searcher hadn't looked through. This was just vandalism. In the middle of the deck, beneath the upper walkway, little piles of peat moss had fallen. She ran for the upper deck, taking the steps 3 at a time, and froze when she got there and found the remains of a trampled phalaenopsis. Its purple and white petals were crushed into the mesh walkway, its stem smashed on the wires. The pot wasn't there, and the pale roots dangled. Shaking, the miner knelt and scooped the flower up in 2 hands. She had to close her eyes to make herself turn toward the plant room, and it was some time before she could force herself to open them. The bonsai trees had been swept to one side and lay in a pile of shattered pottery. The orchids had been smashed and thrown around. The watering system had been pulled apart, leaking puddles onto the bench that hadn't dried. One of the grow lights hung by a wire and flickered as it swung in the air mover's breeze. She moved mechanically, forcing herself to work so that she wouldn't think. She took stock, first of the damage, then her assets. They hadn't found the cabinet with her spare pots, at least. The utilitarian steel tools were thrown around, but not stolen or broken. She rescued the trees first. The ficus was in the worst shape, with a branch broken badly so that it peeled a strip of bark halfway down the trunk, its milky sap already mostly dried. She cleanly cut the limb away, then trimmed and swabbed the damaged part clean. She cut away bruised and damaged leaves and roots, and then repotted it. It was scarred, but would survive. She knew the feeling. The red maple had damage to a few smaller limbs, the new ones. She pruned them back and tried not to pay attention to the ugly lopsided shape that resulted. Amazingly, the juniper just needed to be repotted. The orchids were a different story. 4 of them, including the purple and white phalaenopsis, were completely beyond saving. She shook the loose moss and soil from their roots for use in repotting the others, and placed their mangled forms in the digester. 2 were in reasonable shape, the white dendrobium with its tiny star-like flowers, and the extravagant yellow and purple catalia. These she repotted and carefully tied to new stakes, trimming back damaged leaves and flowers. The rest she could possibly save with a great deal of work and care. She put them in the digester. It took 20 minutes to repair and restring the watering system, and then to mop up the floor so that she'd know whether it was leaking or not. 3 trees and 2 flowers stood in the light of the remaining grow lamps in the middle of the 3 rows of empty benches. When she finally put away the tape and shears, her hands trembled from suppressed rage. She forced herself to wash them in the sink, barely noticing the tiny stings from scrapes and cuts as the soap got into them. Her bunk had been ransacked as badly as the hold. The blanket had been thrown off. The sheets and mattress bore long, gaping knife wounds. Her drawers and closets were thrown open, though the inexpert vandals hadn't found the hidden compartments. The slim black box under the bed had been dumped out, and the tangled ribbons bore boot prints. Her rifle was gone. Through the growing red haze of fury, something in the back of her head took that in and said, "That's interesting." She picked up her medals and placed them back in the box, finding one of the 12 missing. She patted the floor looking for it, then snapped the box shut and slid it back under the bed, wondering if whoever had dumped them out had known what they were for. Wounded in action. Valor. Skill. Quick thinking and resourcefulness. Desperation, fury, and revenge in only tangential service of someone else's cause. She tried to remember if the missing honor had had her name on it, or if she'd ground that one smooth, too. She found the pictures that had fallen off the bulkhead and put them in the drawer. Making the bed and covering over the large rents full of mattress stuffing made her feel silly, but the physical activity calmed her. Her sword at her hip kept whacking the hatchway when she turned in the small space, reminding her of what she ached to be doing right then. Focus, she told herself. She went to the cockpit and found it operational. Whoever had done this had wanted to make sure she could still flee. They hadn't damaged the equipment, but there was a distinct and overpowering smell of urine. Fucking barbarians. Fucking amateurs. Just because they didn't trash the hardware didn't mean they hadn't trashed the software. She started up the ship's computer in emergency mode, found a backup from before she'd docked, and reactivated from that.
Hello, boss.
Full diagnostics, she ordered, and waited. The cockpit view of the station dock exterior showed it to be pathetically empty. Flight control showed a lonely ship way out past the nav beacons, probably an arrival. Maybe more recruits for the fight. Maybe another miner who'd have to deal with cheats and a lockdown and still not be able to sell their ore.
Finished, boss.
She jumped when the computer finally responded. The results popped up on the nearest panel, and she scanned them. Most everything was fine, which didn't surprise her. They seemed to want to hurt her, but leave her able to flee. Some interior cameras offline. Life support in the escape pod offline. She went to have a look at the escape pod, and groaned. Someone had wrenched open one of the panels, yanked the air filtration system completely out of its socket, then inexpertly jammed it all back in. 3 wires were broken. If she ever tried to use it like this, she'd probably be dead in minutes. Legally, she could swap it out at any station for a standard fee and let them deal with it, but that would require her to notice ahead of time, and at this station, she'd rather fix it herself, thanks. No time just then, though. That discovery prompted another thought. Did they disable the escape pod out of spite, or did they intend to force her to use it? She went back to the list of offline cameras and went on a hunt. There was only one camera out in a compartment that seemed untouched. The engine room. It didn't take long to find the little package behind an access panel, a flashbang grenade wired up to a remote detonator. She told the ship to do a full sweep of the interior space, and to remind her to do her own sweep later. After all, it was poor practice to only leave one present behind. She stripped down and threw the diamond fiber undersuit in the washer, then indulged in a lukewarm shower herself. She dressed in clean clothes and lay out the armaments they'd left her. Flechette pistol went on her right hip, with the sword opposite. The shotgun would be useful, but clumsy without a harness, and the harness for the rifle was presumably still attached to the rifle. Grenades from the secret drawer compartment went into her thigh pockets. With everything else done, she checked the exterior camera carefully and then crept from her ship, locking it up tightly this time with the law enforcement override disabled, and made her way across the deck. The lights were still down low. In the dockmaster's shack, she pulled up the terminal control, found the notification routine that had been attached to her airlock, and triggered it manually. 5 minutes' wait was enough. 6 black-uniformed security team members showed up, heavily armed and armored. They swept out into a cursory search of the darker port, flashlight beams sweeping quickly every which way. Amateurs. They took up positions around the airlock entrance to her empty ship, looking tense. The one on the far left, after some rapidly hissed back and forth, darted forward and jabbed at the access pad for a little while. The miner studied the dockmaster's terminal, but couldn't find an intercom program. She did find a gas purge function, to cycle atmosphere in the airlock. A nice, noisy affair. She triggered it, and the security team immediately dropped to a crouch behind their riot shields, bringing up their rifles. While they were distracted, she crept out to a pallet not too far from her ship and watched. Not the best position, but reasonably well hidden in the dark, and she could get back to the shack without trouble.
Yeah, she's here,
someone said.
Trapped like a rat,
someone else said, prompting nervous tittering from the other 5 would-be cats. The miner considered a well-tossed grenade, but was out of practice and didn't want to damage the airlock. She wanted to stay and observe longer, but without knowing whether backup was coming, she decided to observe from farther away. From further away. Halfway back to the dockmaster's shack, her ship paged her.
Message, boss.
She rushed the rest of the way there as quietly as she could, then very carefully closed the mechanical door. The keyed-up guards didn't seem to have heard anything. She tapped slowly on the plastic, a few seconds apart and louder each time. At the sixth tap, one of them turned a helmeted head quizzically. "Patch it through," she muttered, making sure her voice stayed quieter than the fifth tap. "Attention, fugitive," came McMaster's voice in her head. She didn't respond. "I said, attention, fugitive." "Sorry, thought you were talking to someone else. What did you say?" "I said, attention." Silence. "You certainly are a great deal of trouble." "That's so." "I want you to know that I'm being extremely generous here. It would be a trivial matter to have my people board your ship, take you prisoner, and remand you for trial. But frankly, I'm not interested in you. You told the dockmaster that you intended to leave as soon as your business here is done, and I'm telling you, your business here is done." "That's it. Fuck off and sin no more." "Somehow I consider that last part unlikely. Just leave." "What if I don't feel like it?" "Then my people will take you into custody, assuming you aren't accidentally killed resisting arrest. That does unfortunately happen sometimes, Grace Molina." She winced. She tried so hard to be menacing, and was so bad at it. "Seems to me," she said, "you had Angelica's brother killed so you don't lose your nice position. Maybe I'm a convenient scapegoat to keep her from killing you right back. I guess that's a hell of a lot easier story to tell if I turn tail and run." "Well," he said after a long silence, "at least we understand each other." "I don't think we do," she said, keeping an eye on the security team still watching an empty airlock. "Your people trashed my ship and stole my service rifle. You're going to pay for that." "You're in no position to negotiate." "I'm hunkered down with the rifle you didn't find and the explosives you didn't find and 6 months of water and rations. Maybe Del Rio won't believe my story, but she'll sure as hell be willing to clear out your little guard detail to come hear my piece. 5,000 credits. That'll cover the phalaenopsis." "What the devil's a phalaenopsis?" "Something that'll cost you 5,000 credits. I figure 100 grand will make us even for the damage. Call it $120 to get on my good side." 120,000 credits? Are you drunk? I could buy your ship twice over for that much. "Could be, but that's not what you're buying. Think it over." She cut the connection and watched the half-dozen armored goons for a while longer. They were already losing discipline waiting, with two turned toward each other and chatting, and another actually sitting on the floor. She wondered if any of them had been the ones to trash her ship. It wouldn't be too hard to take them all out, even without using a grenade. Instead, she triggered another gas purge. She spent a brief moment enjoying their panic, then used the distraction to make her getaway. And that is where we will call it for today. We should be able to finish this next week, no problem. Probably how many more pages? How many more pages am I looking at? Wow. Yeah, 2 installments. They'll be short. They'll be extra short. Actually, you know what? What time is it? I gotta go. So yeah, next week, when I know what my schedule is, I'll post it in the Discord. Until then, well,
You get to find out with everybody else, like me.
Okay. Anything else salient? Any dings? Doesn't look like it. I don't think I done been banned. Oh, geez, but a lot of messages. Somebody saying Poland here a lot. Anyway. Oh, good. Hopefully, Jakey Pakey 2, you enjoyed Blind Sight. It's a cute one. It's a little disjointed, but it's a cute one. Alrighty. I got to run. Stay safe, stay sane, be decent to each other as per usual, and I'll see you all next time. Toodaloo!